guess that would be another causative factor. You actually have to differentiate what commercialization is.
I mean, so I'm going to put up U.S. dominated sesame industry, right? And to me, that's the central issue around all these things. Is all you're doing. I mean, whether or not these bans are a good idea in universal, right? We live in a competitive world, and what you're fundamentally doing there is telling your competitors, "Hey, I just dropped out of the race." So.
But then, like with the alternative, was it some kind of the EU develops
Workarounds. So
organic products or something? Or was it kind of
organic and natural products.
Yeah.
Non-SB products, right? So I mean that may well be true. The argument then is, if it's easy to do that, then we're all wasting our time because synbio is not that important anyways.
Yeah.
It's not giving you any advantage.
Yeah, right. So if that is a trivial exercise, then we just flew 3 days in Hong Kong, which is not so bad.
But is it?
Beg your pardon?
Is it
trivial or not?
No, you've got different marketplaces. You can have mass market PSB products compete, and at the same time you can have an organic line that pay 10 times as much for, but among select communities is still a viable marketplace.
Sure. I mean, yes. I mean, I believe that, but the 10 times as much, right? That's the driver. What that says is that there are huge utility differences between the two outcomes. So,
synthetic biology isn't necessarily going to make new products that you can't get in other ways. Discussing rubber.
Absolutely,
You can produce rubber. Video about producing synthetic rubber that way. So you can do the chemical process in Europe, and you can do it the synthetic biology way in the US.
So I mean, right, and if they end up being cost equivalent, and in fact all synbio applications are roughly cost equivalent, then I mean, to me, then that's the same thing. We've all wasted our time. We've sort of said we bet on a horse that didn't come in. But something about like biotech. You were sort of making your point about biotech. If I would, being a financial guy, I would have said the opposite. The expected utility of a biotech stock is lower than that of a lottery ticket, historically. So.
Good. Okay. Yeah, we can move on to the next one. So, this one is close to some of us who work in this area about design standards and biobricks and chassis. So here we have property rights should be respected, ? Who owns the IP right? BBF centralized decision making. Government and scientists are responsible for the biosafety, biosecurity. One project wins Nobel Prize. Scientists adopt methods. Easy operation. Trade exchange problems are quick and easy. Infect into another country. Right. So, what jumps out at us here?
We also have informal standards adopted by industry on that.
Yeah.
There's a way you actually can adopt that.
Yeah.
Well, the idea of one project winning a Nobel Prize and therefore by prestige setting a precedent.
Absolutely. Yeah. And economic aspects as well.
A fair amount about coming to agreements really on intellectual property as well
Yeah.
as design. So design standards are wrapped up with intellectual property.
Yeah.
I wonder if that would be the main driver of that.
I think your point is my issue about centralized decision making is similar kind of questioning the question. In that I think neither of us really think that international agreement would be necessary. You could have de facto standards which just take over. And in my hypothesis, you don't have agreement. You just have fiat. It is decided, and enough people follow it. You don't need international agreement. There's just a sufficiently influential body.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you take the ultimate thing in there, like the international biosafety standards, they're only advice. You don't get guidance. The only binding nature is under national regulations. As WHO saying, this is what we think you should do.
What was the disease that was BSL-4 in the U.S. The Indians wanted to work on it, so they just changed the classification to 3.
There's loads. I mean, anthrax is 3, although according to the WHO criteria, just 3.
Oh no, I mean for the WHO criteria, it should be.
It's treated as 3 in the US, but under the criteria, it should be 2.
Oh, 2. Oh, you mean it's treated up? No,
Yeah.
yeah. Up, I don't have a problem with. I was struck by someone to the corner. Yeah, it's 3. Yeah.
I don't know which one it would be.
I'm trying to remember. That was really funny. I mean, it was sort of sad, but it was sort of funny that they just that was their way of solving the problem. They just said, okay, we declare it to be BL3. So.
And that gets into the whole point. These are standards and legislation.
That's true. All right, so we've got consequences. Promoting development. Big companies emerge. People in developing countries would be affected. They have to pay for their own gene, cooperated together and share. Some group will always build their own version that is basically the same or more extensible in a way that doesn't matter.
This kind of workaround, is it?
Yeah, it seems that way.
I think that's just what will happen. That's what happens in IT.
Yeah.
Somebody always wants to build their own one, even if it ends up being almost the same.
It's true, isn't it? Yeah.
And people have been saying that about systems biology and synthetic biology.
It's a nice way to learn, I think.
That is interesting. Not all standards are good. If not done properly, it would have a negative effect. The development of synthetically created organisms might become faster and have more meaning. And though will people follow standards, i.e., e.g., i.e.,
Internet Explorer.
Internet Explorer. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I think that's interesting there because a lot of the discussion that seems to have sort of taken place over the last over the last 3 days, it seems to be pushing this need to develop international standards. But when you look at the sort of the initial consequences that people have written down, there aren't all that many of those that would suggest that it is that important or it is that crucial.
Or even
So
that
there's
positive. I mean, there's quite a few negative consequences.
The rush to create standards, as I take it from the BBF, is to have a working repository, not so much for, and then the repository has beneficial effects rather than the standards having beneficial effects in themselves.
I think there are 2 other factors there. Part of it's trying to future-proof it, which is saying we don't want to be doing things now, and I say exactly not to release it, basically not to time on standards. That we don't want to be doing something now, we're going to have to throw away all of our work next year and start again from scratch. What we're going to do is to stop building massive repositories and think, what are we going to want in 5 years' time? And also, on the top of that, there's also the potential there for negative impact on standards as much as maybe it could even impede progress whilst people wait for standards to be developed.
Also, our post-it notes, we've got a lot more negatives than positives, but that green positive particularly about things probably that's what takes it from a bench industry to a real industry.
Yeah.
So the size of the
maybe
pros
we
and
have a
cons
kind of
are disproportionate on this kind of.
You're right. It's not number. Some notes should be bigger than others.
Yes.
So we should have given you different sizes.
Yeah.
Do you think it's also an indication of how grown up something is?
Yeah, I was actually having the exact same thought. It's an indication of maturity, that the field has reached some level of maturity, that people are no longer thrashing around talking about definitions. Right. I mean, from a field that spends endless amounts of time talking about definitions, this doesn't, we haven't grown up yet. We haven't figured out what we're talking about yet.
I don't know if because as an indicator, if people rush to do it, not rush, but if they just emerged at a certain point, you could say, okay, they've reached this point in development. They're developed in a short field now. If the field itself sees it as a necessity and does it at varying speeds because of various institutional arrangements that that can happen differently at different points of maturity, like synthetic biology is not very mature, but because of the institutions involved, they might have standards quite soon.
That's true. And I just write a lot of the standards push seems to be inspired by the fact that the people who are pushing it hardest actually have spent some time looking at the history of previous writing industry. Right? I mean, Drew and Tom and I spent a lot of time talking to Rose Smith at MIT, who's this big historian of technology. Right? And like, well, this was really key. Interchangeable parts was really important. So
standards allowed it to take off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also there's the engineering analogy that is so important in engineering, and therefore in alternative biology.
I mean, if you're going to scale up an industry, Tom uses that example of creating nails that are all of a certain size and standard, and then therefore you can build things. So,
but I mean, the flip side is we spent a lot of time talking about standards. Please don't tell Ken I said this because it'll drive him crazy. But
It's being taped, by the way.
It is difficult to find evidence of a standard that inhibited progress, right? Like we always say, we not only do we need standards, we need this to get the standards right. But I mean, somebody come up with me, and we brainstormed on this and not really come to a satisfactory.
How do you feel about Betamax?
Beg your pardon?
I don't like Betamax.
Well, so you had a market competition between it and VHS and Betamax. And so, right, the traditional story was that Betamax was the superior technology and it failed. But actually, if you look at it, the problem was that Betamax tapes couldn't record in 2 hours, and people wanted 2-hour recordings because they wanted to record movies on TV. And so there really was this like massive market problem for Betamax. But my argument wasn't that, you know, better and worse standards, right? It was that is there a case of where people chose standards and inhibited development of something important?
It's very hard to say because how do you compare that to?
I would say the British Railway system. Early innovators in railway, like decades before other countries, now we're suffering for it.
Was that?
Our rail track is very narrow.
Yeah.
So our carriages are quite uncomfortable. You can't have big, our bridges are too low and so on. So the whole network is cramped by that decision from 120 years.
Or if you try and take the Trans-Siberian Railway from China to Russia, you can stop at the Mongolian border for about 4 hours while they take the train, pick it up, put your goods on.
Right, but
so there you've got a real problem with the rations.
But that was deliberate. That was not a case of poorly chosen standards. That was a case of the Russians deliberately choosing a standard that was different from everybody else's because it made it harder to compete.
What about keyboards, like the QWERTY keyboards?
Yeah. So there you'd say, right, that's a case. These are standard inferior things. And by the way, I agree with you on that, but it's worth noting the only studies that were done that proved that the Torah keyboard are better than QWERTY were done by a guy named Dvorak, not by coincidence. But I don't know, right? Like, what did the QWERTY keyboard? But what about the technology did that standard inhibit, right? Like,
it's very hard to have stories of histories that haven't happened.
That happened.
Yeah. So you don't know what other path it might have taken. That's also, it might not collapse completely, but you might have it develop in a particular way.
But you can have histories of frustrations.
Yeah. You might find histories of
Is that the end standard wireless network? I mean, you know, it's existed for years.
Nobody uses it.
Well, it's in every Apple product that's put out. Increasing number of people are using it. We weren't waiting for it to go from being a draft IE standard to being a standard. It would have come out a few years ago.
So that I'm fine with, right? So to me that's perfect. Right? That's an example of the delay in choosing a standard may have caused problems, right?
Maybe.
But would it matter what the details of the standard were, right? Or would any standard that was gotten out 2 years ago have been just fine? To me, that's like, should we really pay attention to what the standards are? Or should we just say, take them laying out and move on, right? Stop thinking about it. I don't know. I just sort of laying it out there.
But then I wonder when you look at examples where you're retrofitting entire infrastructure because of a problem with standards.
Yes.
So, trying to upgrade to what's happening at the moment with televisions in the US, or upgrade to ESL. I don't know whether those are just technologies anyway, or whether the standard is chosen as the history.
But that and the railway and the keyboard were all like the standards at the time did serve and solve a particular problem. It's just the problem changed.
The problem, that's right.
And it depends what your horizon is. And a lot of these new problems came up decades later that we couldn't predict. So that might be maybe
Well, maybe what's interesting that's come out of this, I think, is it's clear that, I mean, there's no timeline put on that statement, but it's clear that the time at which standards are either forced or emerged is going to have different sets of consequences. Either be a sign of a mature field or be a sign of a push to really commercialize or drive a registry that's going to...
Well, I mean, the important thing around standards is who determines them. And, if standards are determined in an open manner with all players involved, you might get a fairer field. If you get a small number of players, or particularly individual companies who rush to develop standards very early on, it's probably because they want to dominate the field and controlling those standards. I think that's happening at the moment around nanotechnology. Trying to get a definition of standards that suits your particular technology.
Good. Okay. Yep.
Should I read this?
So this is Jane. So you go for it.
Hey, because this is mine. So, a synthetic pet organism like a Tamagotchi becomes very popular with teenagers. So the causes are Sony buys up Ginkgo Bioworks Aramis. Oh dear, they buys up everything.
It goes here, yeah.
Oh right, yeah, I suppose that would be necessary. Much time elapses. No one worries about biosecurity anymore. Right, so it's another time question. Synthetic biology becomes safe, in scare quotes. Animals proven to be disease resistant. So animals in quotes as well. So what does that mean?
I thought if everyone had the same pet,
Yeah.
it's a vector for, you lose your herd immunity, you have some horrible disease that sweeps through the whole population. That's not a good idea. So, like we don't have, we don't keep rats or cockroaches. They're cuter anyway. No, they're cuter anyway. But we wouldn't keep an animal that was dangerous, but for kids.
Yeah, like a foot and mouth or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we would. I don't know.
Basic organisms have simple feeding requirements, i.e. low effort for achievement, high growth or visible change rate. Yeah, I suppose that would be necessary to have it as a pet organism.
It's not much fun as a game otherwise. It's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
it's
And
a
it would
project.
probably live in a little thing, yeah. So this is a kind of mixture of industry, scientific, and also kind of attitudes towards synthetic biology. How realistic do you think?
Oh, so you imagine this? I just raising. You imagine this organism to be a bacterial organism or a microbial organism rather than I thought it would be an animal organism.
Well, maybe, I don't know. I mean,
How realistic are the fairies?
yeah,
I
it
can't
could
imagine
even,
most people finding microbes wonderful pets, but
you could have a colony which would actually flash in a digital format. Sorry, I'm not doing IGEM.
Well, it depends. I mean, there's this new sim game called Spore. That starts with the very basic cellular, unicellular organism. So, apparently that's quite entertaining. So you could imagine somebody having a colony of bacteria and some way to view it with the box that comes in or whatever, and actually enjoying trying to raise it, or like with Tamagotchi, deliberately killing it.
Yeah.
So we have to worry about that in Sony, but it produces spore as well.
Produces well, right? Spore. Yes.
Will, what's his name?
designing it as it grows up.
Yeah.
It's like Sim City for organisms.
Sim everything.
Yeah.
Can I put a request in that it produces alcohol?
Teenagers.
Over 18.
Yeah,
18 and 19 year olds.
yeah, consequence for you. Parents get attracted to this.
Alcohol pops, maybe.
Yeah. Alcohol isn't a population driver. But I mean, how realistic do the scientists here think that is?
A pet organism like that.
Not one of the scientists here, but that is so far in the future that, right? Like, I would expect to live to see it, but I would also expect the world to look nothing, so different from what it is today that no prediction I think would be anything.
Except for the way you describe it's different. If it really is a colony of microbes that flash and depending on what, then that's
Well, even that would require massive alterations to the entire legal system. Then you're taking GMOs, using them as something that's been genetically modified.
But if they're not alive.
Yeah. They're watermarked, yeah. And they're owned by Sony.
Certainly is inside the EU.
What about in the US?
Well, I was talking to somebody else over there. You couldn't do. You'd have problems taking something like that out of the lab, out of the strictly regulated condition, to give it to a 4-year-old to play with at home.
Yeah.
And the consequences: interest in science and technology among children, science and technology growth and support of systems biology, industry revolution. Synthetic biology does do biofuels, treatments for diseases, and new materials. All right. Synthetic biology does not succeed with major applications, but does become a fun way to make new games. I like that. Illegal animal fights in schools. Surge in adults entering animal husbandry. Though it becomes very popular like any other fad, it will disappear after a while. Domestication of biotech, domestication of computers.
Parallel story, that's my own short.
Oh right, parallels. You mean everyone has one at home?
Yeah.
Genetic combinations of pets with animals lead to creation of mutants. They take over the world and enslave humans.
I, for one, welcome our new Tamagotchi overlords.
I also want to add on that after the Sony comment that Steve Jobs produces a smaller, cheaper, prettier version.
Yeah, which is more trendy and more expensive.
The icing. It's the icing on the cake.
Synthetic biology used for games, cooking, household chores, fueling house, is that right?
No, fuel.
Oh, right.
Yeah, fuel.
Within the house cars.
So just
That's sort of under the domestication
Yeah,
of biotech.
yeah.
I mean, it just becomes something that's really useful in everyday homes.
massive increase in concern over synthetic biology by public, especially animal rights. Synthetic people, humans, so that's maybe a little bit similar to the mutants, so I don't know. Synthetic traits escape out competing with natural ecosystems. I think that's all of them.
How about identification of new biomass to be fed into biofuel programs? Dead pests.
They all get discarded when they become unpopular and then put into the
Yeah,
biofuels.
straight into the field. Straight into the gas
Feedstock,
tank. Yeah.
There's got to be people here older than I am who had a pet rock. I mean, this is before my time, but I see people nodding and recognizing.
Pet rock,
You could
yeah.
add new dimensions of the pet rock by a nice fungal growth. Stroking it.
But it might become a hacker platform, just like with Ibo, the dog, and Lego Mindstorm. Something like this could become a sort of accessible hacker platform that starts to get used for other things. And starts off as a pet and ends up as a sensor.
Or a weapon, maybe.
Yeah.
That's right. If you've got to the point where you can actually make something this portable and this safe, which is a long time from now, then presumably garage biotech has also reached the point where you could dismantle it and do it.
Yeah, so that's like a
Yeah.
cause almost that it would already have to become
Yeah.
domesticated maybe.
I wouldn't assume it had to be safe, because it doesn't necessarily emerge in well-regulated countries. So for example, there are genetically modified pets for sale already, which are fish, and they're sold in, in fact, they're even sold in the US. So. But I mean, they initially were sold in Korea and China. So
People are paying for cloning of their own dogs
and cats.
Yeah, sure.
That synthetic people one is interesting. It's like instead of having giving your child a doll to play with, you have a cut down version of a baby.
Mini me.
Yeah. Cloning means synthetic biology.
Yeah, that's Dr. Evil again. Yeah. Okay, those are interesting.
Should we move on?
There's one more back
Oh,
here.
God, you can do that. Please.
Oh, okay, we need some more light. But this is the synthetic biology delivers biofuel for under $10 a barrel. This one we have mutation-free synthetic organisms, altered infrastructure, so easier target, reverse inflation, so $10 equals 1 million in today's money, or barrels get very small. Cellulosic production breakthrough, inevitable stroke current conditions plus time. Oil producers don't intervene, a la electric car years ago. Right. It's got a couple of interesting ones there. Well, this is sort of the presentation we heard the other day, wasn't it? That biofuel could be delivered for under $10 a barrel.
Yeah, I mean, this is one which kind of was portrayed as being reasonably realistic by Aramis.